my ex-husband was a bass player, and he got a gig here in Vegas on a strip. So for the first year, he was traveling back and forth. And he was like, you could totally make a living as a string player in Vegas, like full time. And of course, I would be like, my confidence was like down to zero because, 10 years, you don't do this professionally. So I would be like, are you crazy? Like my chops are gone and I'm too old and nobody's going to like me and I can't make it. And, so we would be fighting about this for a few months. And then one day I remember I was sitting in the office and I was so miserable. And I was like, fuck this. I'm going to give it a shot.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 2020. And Cory was about to tell me to do something like start the show, which is exactly what I'm doing. So welcome. And we thank you for listening because this week we have a fantastic guest. Her name begins with Z, and that's all we're going to call her because I can't pronounce it properly, so why should you? From Starset, one of the greatest cellists on the damn planet, almost the Tina Zhao of our era, even though she's still alive and only 30 and actually younger. Siobhán, Cory, how are you?
Doing well. It was great to have. I mean, she's my dear friend, so it was a pleasure to have her on and to be able to, having some, background knowledge of who she is. It was nice to hear her tell her story, So it's
and
a great
another
episode.
unique story, which is always good. Like I feel like we've talked to so many people, and there's a lot of shared kind of like ideas and mindsets, but everyone's very different in their journey to get where they are. So that's cool.
Well, you have to ask yourself, how do you become a world-class cellist from Slovakia playing at Raiders Stadium, whatever the fuck they call it in football or basketball, what, baseball?
We won't claim to be sports aficionados, but anyway, stay tuned. We won't give too much away. This is part one with Z, Zuzana,
Subscribe!
Darling. Listen and subscribe, 2020-d.com. Stay tuned for Zuzana, part one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of 2020. I'm Siobhán Cronin here as always with my cohorts and my co-hosts, my Lost Symphony bandmates, our sponsor, Lost Symphony Chapter 1, 2, and 3, Benny Goodman and Cory Peza. How you guys doing?
Doing good. It's been a minute.
Enjoying a nice cocktail, drink, whatever
Excited
we're having
to see
right
you.
now.
Polar seltzer. Yeah.
We put this down to once a week because it's a lot to drink in. My mom only has so many hours in the day, even in her retirement, to listen to us. So we're like, now we're not so stressed for episodes. So it's like, I feel like I haven't seen you in forever.
I know.
Normally just
Now that the world is starting back up too, everybody's getting back on the road, which is awesome.
Is
More
it?
shows. I mean, yeah, I think it's awesome. I think I got really depressed, but I didn't acknowledge it because, that's what we do. We move on, we do other things.
Yeah, you suppress those feelings. And
Absolutely.
then you drink.
No, that's not how they do it now. That's not how they do it now. We're not in a time where people suppress their feelings. Like they tell people, you tell everyone about your feelings.
I'm perpetually in a time where people suppress their feelings.
Okay, before we get too carried away, we'll let the shenanigans come up later. Let's introduce our wonderful, beautiful guest who is here with us, my dear friend Zuzana, also known as Z. I call her Darling for anyone that follows us on social media. We always are calling each other that, but I'm so excited that she is willing to join us, my bandmate in Starset, incredible cellist, incredible human being. I'm so happy that she's here with us, tuning in from Vegas. And I can't wait to dive into your story and have a great time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. We had the chance to kind of meet in person just a few months back for the Starset acoustic show, so that was a good time. You and Siobhán have traveled the world playing Starset songs, so I'm sure you guys have tons of awesome stories from that perspective, which we're going to dive into later on. But as always, it's a good story to hear how a cellist gets into the rock and roll world. So can you tell us how you got into music in the first place?
Since I can remember, I was like singing and I was like really into the music, and my dad is a musician. And I have a brother and a sister. I'm the oldest, and we all are musicians. So when I was like 6 years old, my dad obviously noticed that, there's something. So he kind of asked us, like, do you guys want to like play an instrument? And we were like, yeah. And so he asked me, like, what is your favorite instrument? Like, what would you want to play? And I said, I want to play piano. But my dad was like, well, we don't have money to do the piano. Why don't you start with the recorder? And,
I love this story.
so I was like, okay. So I'm like, here I am, 6 years old.
This was like a sexual protection thing on your father's part. It's like she's never gonna get any boys with the recorder. We'll keep her safe.
Oh my God.
Well, I'm engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you changed. Are you playing the recorder now professionally?
No.
Hey, let's not hate on recorder
I rest
players.
my case.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so yeah, I feel like anybody can play recorder, but I actually played recorder for 5 years, and I basically brought it to another level. I went to the competitions, and I play like classical parts where they were really.
What does a recorder competition sound like? I'm sorry, I don't mean to be. I have to understand this. There are recorder competitions, and what does one do to quote unquote take recorder to the next level? I need to understand what that means, Z.
Well, usually you play recorder for like 1 year or 2 years, and then you transfer to like a clarinet or a flute like this, or a different instrument. But for me, I just kept playing it for 5 years. And so, I was like reading the violin parts, violin pieces, because I was just so bored with the flute pieces, So then we did that for like 5 years. And then when there was a time to actually play this flute, I couldn't do it. I couldn't make it sound like it just was not happening. So I was like so pissed off that I actually quit music for like about 2 weeks. Okay, here I am, 11.
That's the most intense recorder story I've ever heard.
That reminds me of the time people like I played guitar, and then someone gave me Guitar Hero, and I tried playing the same song on Guitar Hero on like PlayStation, and I couldn't do it, and I gave up music because I couldn't play the video game.
Right, you get like pissed out. Like I was so frustrated. So I was like, all right, well, I'm quitting music. So it was about 2 weeks, and of course my dad saw me being like all antsy and just like not being satisfied, So he's like, what about cello? And of course I don't even know what it is at that time. Like what's that? So he shows me the picture of the instrument, right, of the cello, and I'm like, I'm not playing that. It's like, it's huge. It's bigger than me. So, and he's like, come on, let's try it. So, and it was like, it was such a pain in the ass to find a cello teacher, because I'm from a very small town, and there was like nobody teaching cello in my town.
Where are you from?
Yeah, before we gloss over this, you're from Slovakia. You need to tell more stories about like where you grew up and like the whole, because us Americans.
Yeah, because you're exotic,
totally
but even
experience.
if I was at a bar, I wouldn't know like what to peg you as exactly. So like, tell us what type of
so tell us
exotic.
where you grew up.
Yeah.
So I am from this little small town from Slovakia. The name of the town is Handlova. Can you guys say it?
Handlova.
Handlova.
No.
Oh, that's perfect.
Handlova.
Very nice.
Baklava.
It's like baklava.
I knew that was coming.
I drank so much tequila last night. I have a hanglova.
Oh, so yeah, you have a hangover, Handlova. Okay, well, that sounds good. Oh, we can use that from now on. As you guys are like getting sick of your cocktails.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a very, very little town. There's probably like 5,000 people living, in the town, and we actually had to go get a lesson to the next town because there was nobody teaching a cello in my town. So we went to the next.
Did
town.
your dad have a background in music? Like, why did he choose cello? Is there any reason?
He just loves strings. Like, yeah, he didn't. He's like, the cello, it just sounds really nice. It's like it reminds him of like a human voice.
Well, maybe he was smart. He was like, listen, this girl could be playing at a stadium. If we just make her bad, like, look what she did with the recorder, okay? That's a silly instrument. Imagine if she had a cello, and nobody plays cello, not even one of the 5,000 people in this damn town in Slovakia, not the Czech Republic, Slovakia, okay? Don't confuse the two. And
No, but we should talk
we'll
about
make
that
you
because
a perfect cellist, which, by the way, I want you to know that my 16-year-old and her friend's first show ever was to see you, and their first comment was, we loved the live strings. The strings were so cool. And it's because they are.
Yep. Of course they are.
Anyway, go on. So you had to go to the next town over to get cello lessons.
Yeah, and so we tried it, and the very first time I actually hold the cello, I fell in love with it, at the first strike of it's just the sound that it came out of it, and like, it really reminds me of a human voice, it's just.
Wait, did you make a sound the first time you bowed it? You actually got a sound of it? Because mine is going, and that's about it.
No, it was perfect. No, just kidding. Yeah, no, it was, I don't know how he knew, but I feel like it was meant to be, and ever since I played cello. And I was 11 years old, yeah. So that's how I started with cello. Like, I literally did not want to play cello at first,
Yeah. One interesting thing I want to highlight that we've talked about before that I think is super interesting, especially for us as Americans that are born here. You got to experience, not got to experience, but you did experience what it was like to grow up a little bit under communism. Yeah, it was definitely interesting. I mean, my parents remember obviously more than I do because, the communism fell in 1989 and, I was 11. That was the year when I
Wait a minute.
started playing
You're
cello.
older than me?
Yeah.
That's
what I'm trying to tell you.
No,
I know,
but
and she
I'm
looks
just saying
younger
that you
than
and
you, yeah.
no, is it a cellist thing? Because Mariko, she looks like she's like cryogenically frozen. So
Right.
like, is it is it
Cello keeps you
Starset?
young. Yeah.
Is it
Could be.
Starset? I mean,
I don't
Siobhán
know.
looks good for her age, but like you and Mariko looked like you got stopped in time.
I think it's Vegas, to be honest. It's like the right combination of like
The
good
desert?
lifestyle.
I hope you wear suntan lotion.
Always. Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I feel flattered, but yeah, as I was saying, like the communism fell like when I was very young, so, but I do remember stories from my dad because my dad used to have a band and, they played like parties and weddings and stuff like that. And they actually had to go in front of the judges and, they have to like play in front of them the songs and they would actually say like, you can play this, you can't play these songs, you know what I mean? They would like, you could have long hair, you couldn't wear like a Led Zeppelin t-shirt, it was just like so crazy to me, but yeah, it was very controlling and I'm
Did
glad
anyone ever fake them out and be like, we're gonna play Prayer Jacques and instead played like Slayer?
yeah,
What would
no,
they do? What would they do in Slovakia if you're like you fake them out
I think
under
they would
communism?
shut
Do you
you down.
know?
I think they would like shut you down. Like I think you would not be able to perform,
At all.
Yeah, there were like a lot of artists from Slovakia who ran to America, during the time. And then like 20 years later, they came back finally.
So let me ask you, as an 11-year-old, did you have a vision that you would eventually leave the country and move to the U.S.? Or like at what point did that enter your mind?
So I've never could imagine leaving my country. You know what I mean? It was just something that, you gotta have balls, and I felt like I've never had balls to do that, And then one day I met my ex-husband now in my country. And that was the number one reason why I came to US. But before that, like I was never like, oh my God, I want to go to US, I want to go live there, because I couldn't even imagine leaving my family, to this day, every time I start to think about that day when I was leaving, I still get emotional about it. Like, so my dad, like losing it, and saying like, don't worry, like you're going for better, you're going to have better life, you're going to have more opportunities, but it was like heartbreaking, to see that.
Yeah.
But never, it was one of the hardest things that I've ever done in my life, but it was also one of the best things that I did in my life because the opportunities are just countless.
Yeah, you're certainly taking advantage of them too, because you're a busy girl.
Yeah, definitely. Like when it comes to music, you have so much more opportunities here, So
Yeah.
I'm thankful for that. It was hard, This was 17 years ago. I came to this country, 2000.
So like, when you figured out that the cello was your spirit animal and that you started becoming one with it, did you say to yourself, I'm like Jacqueline Dupre, and that I could sit there and it doesn't matter that I'm going to get MS. I'm gonna make it count every moment of every day until that happens. Like, did you have a female or a male or any, like, did you say, yo ma, I yo, this is what I need to obtain that level because I've seen you play. And look, first off, being a cellist, cool. Being a good cellist, holy shit. Being a cellist at the level that Dustin calls you back, and I know this because I work with 2 cellists that he called back. Wow. And I can understand because you're like a unicorn. You're because you could do anything you want because everyone needs a cellist. I always tell people play the bass. Everyone needs a bass player. But literally, like, people need cellists. And then there's you.
Where's the question?
There was no question.
The question is like, I feel like her dad put her out to the universe. And the question is, when you finally realized that this was your calling, did you look at yourself as like a Jacqueline Dupree, which, by the way, is a really obscure reference of an amazing female cellist that did die of MS, by the way, which is very sad, at 42, R.I.P. But like, did you look at her? Like, I looked at Vladimir Horowitz on the piano and said, that's amazing. Yeah, that's why I want to play.
Yeah, definitely. Like, she's one of my heroes, you know. And, you know, there's a lot of people who will criticize her for her, like, vibrato or vibrato. Is that how you say it in English? Vibrato?
Vibrato, yeah.
Vibrato, yeah. I say
so, you know,
whatever.
like, gets like kind of annoying to some of the people, but I love her passion. You know, there is so much.
What's annoying about it? Is it just too much? Is it too much vibrato?
Oh, so is she like the Zach Wilde of cello?
Yeah, it's like, it's very,
For the non-classical
like,
people.
Yeah.
So wait, so the classical people have like this religious argument like guitarists where they're like, well, you want to utilize vibrato like makeup where you don't notice it unless it's gone. And then some people are just like, bitch, I'm going to dress like I'm on RuPaul's Drag Race.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess. It's the same thing.
But with vibrato.
Yeah.
Well, I think just like anything, if you have a unique sound, that's what draws people in. And she definitely had a unique sound and a unique presence. And, you know, it was one in a million, you know. So whether people liked it or not, it was definitely distinctive.
Well, especially with like classical music and classical instrumentation, it seems like there's a lot, it's a lot harder to push boundaries, maybe more so than in rock and metal and stuff like that. Not that there isn't, you know, pushback if you're trying to do something really original, but I can imagine it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very, very like a closed-minded in the classical world. It's very, very like, you know, and then you get I don't know if Siobhán, this happened to you, but, you know, you get sometimes when you want to do a little different things, you know, you kind of get a little judged, you know, for it. And it's like, you know,
100% all the time.
Yeah.
Hold on, but can I tell you why I like Mariko? Because when I asked her who she was inspired by, like as far as composers or whatever, she's just like, I like trees and walking on the beach. And I see things that are beautiful. Like basically she's inspired by transcendentalism.
By nature.
And then she sends me a track. So I'm working with all 3 of you ladies, and you're all fucking brilliant. But Mariko sends me this track, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering her name. I'm so sorry. And it's just this whimsical, crazy, like so over the top, like 3 different tracks that I'm just like, how could you possibly think this? And you realize they're just consistent all the way through. Like, and I must think that as a classical cellist that they're probably in a room like, oh, how dare she do that? Why would she ever think, oh, in Japan, they'd cut off her hand for that. Like, why would you do that? And meanwhile, you're complaining about that, but then you have space aliens like her playing with you. Do you feel like when because you're an amazing player, but do you like walk in a room with someone like Mariko and go, oh, she took it so crazy. She played the recorder for 9 years.
Well, I have a lot of respect, you know, for Mariko, and I agree with you.
Is that how it's said, Mariko?
I think it's Mariko.
Okay.
Mariko. But it's like, you know, Americans, I think they say Mariko. But I mean, it's totally fine. Like, whatever, you know. I'm probably saying it wrong.
I'll just call you Y instead of Z.
Oh, see, I like that. Very different. Yeah, I actually am very inspired by Mariko, and I think she's. I think it's awesome what she's doing. and she's got such a great like imagination.
But what is she doing? Explain us to our idiots, because I don't know what she's doing. I just hear it and I go, is that okay? Is that even cello? What the fuck am I listening to? Explain it to me, you smart people.
Well,
Sorry if that sounds rude.
No, it doesn't. She's just like using different techniques. Like she's, I'm pretty sure Siobhán, like, what I'm talking about, like the different stuff with the bow, and then she's using a lot of effects, when she's recording it, and
so what does your classical minds think, you and Siobhán? Like, what are you supposed to, I know you've been ingrained to think things. I know Siobhán is staggered with indecisiveness because she's had all these professors and conductors be like, no, you would never flat that fourth. That's the stupidest. Why would you ever? That's not harmony. That's dissonance. That's the definition of dissonance. So I feel like, do you guys have like that in your, like, what are you hearing when you, as classical people, when you hear that kind of crazy technique and she's going through like effects, do you go, oh no, you should never do that? Like, does that go through your head, or do you go, you're the one that stood up at the end of the bus?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like, how did she... Yeah.
And not to cut you off, Z, but yeah, it's just like talking about Jacqueline Dupre. Like what's very cool with any artist is when they have a unique sound, and just like Z, maybe I have a sound that people can recognize, hopefully, but Mariko's the same. You listen to her cello tracks and that's Mariko. You know, and that's what's
you
very
sound the
cool.
girl like the girl from that show. What's the show with like the violin? You sound like that. You sound like that girl.
What show?
Is it a girl that plays that? It's like the one with the checkers. I think checkers, right?
What are you talking?
I think
don't
he's
know.
making-
Oh, Queen's. I'm making a joke about everyone recognizes you from the Queen's Gambit, but you still don't remember you're on it, which is why. How do you not get the checkers, the chess reference, you silly goose? Literally, you and Z played it online, and the first thing I did was
know.
It's a
text
very
you.
abstract delivery.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
anyway,
every
though,
delivery.
to come back to Z, though, one thing I love about you and Mariko too is that you're very open minded and very supportive, and that's something that I can't stress enough in the classical world. We both came from that. Is that it can be very much in the box, and a lot of people are judgy, and they want to find a reason to criticize you. So it is kind of liberating to be in this world where you can experiment and do different things. But before we get too off the rails, I wanted to talk a little bit about how you actually didn't start kind of in music professionally, because I think it was really cool how you kind of flipped your life around. And this is a story maybe you can tell to the listeners for anyone that wants to rediscover a passion after doing something different. You worked in kind of the corporate world for a while, and I think it's amazing that you had the guts to like jump back into music. So maybe fill in, some of the blanks here, but I think it'd be great because so many people feel...
This explains so much with Dustin.
Well, no, but so many people feel like, it's they have a reason why they don't want to get back into music or pick something up. And you're such an inspiration for me and for people like that, that you can definitely start your life over in any way that you dream,
Yeah, I'm a perfect, like, a proof of that, It's like how much you want it,
Mm-hmm.
So here's what happened. So I went to conservatory in my country, and then, I was teaching a little bit. And then I met my husband. Well, ex-husband now. And so he was the reason why we moved actually to Boston. He was from Boston. So we moved to Boston, and the plan was for me to get into the Boston Philharmonic or do something, as a cellist. Well, I'm thinking I get to Boston and I'm thinking everybody is waiting for me. And so I found out very, very quickly that that's not the case. And
like the one place in the world you could go where there's like more cellists per square inch than anywhere else in the world is like Mass Ave with Berklee School of Music, and every like Asian and European.
It's
oh
the
my God.
Dictionary definition of
Harvard,
like big fish in a small pond to the opposite of that.
Don't forget fucking Harvard music program. Like, are you shitting me? MIT.
All right. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
we get
it. And especially Boston, like, is so classical. Amazing musicians in Boston, amazing. So it didn't happen for me. I mean, I did little gigs here and there, but in the meantime, I got hired in this company where I was supposed to work like 2 days a week, just like a temporarily. Next thing you know, 10 years later, I'm still working there. Okay. Every summer, I was doing this MIT Philharmonic Symphony thing, which is 2 months of rehearsals and then a concert at the end. Okay. But that was like, it was like a voluntary thing. I mean, I did have to go audition for them, but it was basically a volunteer thing. It wasn't a paying gig, but I just did it. So I have something and I keep a little bit of those classical chops, in it. But it was really hard because I would be practicing like really hard for those 2 months. And then when this was over, then I would not be practicing like that because I would be like having 9-to-5 job and like literally working like 60 hours a week. It was for the finance company. And I learned a lot in that company. So I wouldn't say that it was complete waste of time, but I've never felt like my soul was fed, I always felt like something is missing, And then my ex-husband was a bass player and he got a gig here in Vegas on a strip. So for the first year, he was traveling back and forth. And he was like, he could totally make a living as a string player in Vegas, like full time. And of course, I would be like, my confidence was like down to zero because, 10 years, you don't do this professionally. So I would be like, are you crazy? Like my chops are gone and I'm too old and nobody's going to like me and I can't make it. And, so we would be fighting about this for a few months. And then one day I remember I was sitting in the office and I was so miserable. And I was like, fuck this, I'm going to give it a shot. And so I moved to Vegas and it took me about 6 months to actually get in because, you move to Vegas and nobody knows who you are,
Same thing. Yeah. New place.
Yeah. So you kind of have to like go and knock on the doors, go to the auditions, and just, keep your head up and just do it, and it took me about 6 months to get in. And it's been 7 years now.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of getting back in? Because I think it helps to talk practically about like, what did you do? Was it practicing? Was it talking to people? Because, I experienced a similar thing when I moved to Miami. It's just like you realize no one's waiting for you, right? You show up in a new place and there's plenty of other people to do what you might be able to do. So like how practically did you approach that?
So it was a lot of researching online and actually by word. Is that how you say it?
Like word, or like talking to people, word of mouth?
Talking to people, yes, talking to people. And then, the people will be like, oh, hey, there's a Bella Electric Strings. They're looking for string players, and then you see ads, on the Facebook, like there. I remember seeing Bella Electric Strings on the Facebook and like see all these blonde girls, because at the time that was the thing, like everybody were blonde, and I see all these girls, I'm like, yeah, I will never be in this band. Like number one, they're like super hot, they're all blonde, like it's not gonna happen. And next thing you know, there's an ad on the Facebook, if you're interested, send the applications to, there was a link to their website, so I actually had to like send them, pictures and information about me, and then they would actually send me I remember that it was the Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix. They would send me the track and they would send me the chart and they were like, record this, you can record it on the iPhone and then send it to us. And then I did that and then I got in. So
nice. Purple Haze on cello.
Yeah, it was basically like a bass lines that they wanted me to like record and send it to them. So they actually wanted to hear the audio, but also see the video, because that's a lot. Charisma. Yeah. And also like the present, which it sucked 7 years ago. Like I would be so shy and like scared. I would be like this.
We still talk about this when we do videos, like to this day, because that's like another symptom of the classical training is like try and minimize the amount of movement, because like anything that doesn't contribute to the sound, it's like people will say, oh, you're being histrionic or this is totally unnecessary and it's taking away from the performance. And then meanwhile, in the rock world, it's like, how schmaltzy can you be?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And there's a big learning curve with that too.
Yeah, definitely completely different world. And, because a lot of people listen with their eyes,
Yeah.
As much, I don't really like it as much, I mean, I like the whole, like the, depending on what you do, like, of course, in the classical world, like I could care less about how I look, how you care about that sound,
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of gigs that we do, especially in the corporate world, like the corporate gigs that people don't really, it's sad, but people don't really care about how you sound. It's all about
can I tell you, hon?
Yep.
Wait, this is a true story. So next Friday is my last DJ gig where I'm doing weddings. And Cory and I haven't played together for, I don't know, easily over a year, probably even pushing 2 years, which is so sad to think. And he knows all these songs because he stays current with stuff and still practices. I think to myself, can I play 4 chords for an hour? And look, I'm good. People will always walk by me and they're like, wow, I can't believe what you're doing. And I just do an extra crazy arpeggio for them. I'm like, right? Thanks, man. Cory, he used to look at me and be like, dude, you should be doing better for this because we get paid like $400 an hour. But I don't think we should be doing any better because this last weekend I played piano and it was cold. And I'm sitting there going, this is fucking cold. And then I realized everyone's over at a tent, not even listening to me play fucking Home Sweet Home by Motley Crue like a champion. I'm by myself. So I actually even had to make my own decision to get up from the piano and walk to my computers and press play on a mix because nobody cared. Yep. So much that they didn't even tell me to stop freezing my hands.
I know. It's sad.
And then they thanked me for coming in and putting on music. They thanked me. Oh, so thank you for putting on Michael Bublé. You've saved our wedding from boring.
So thank you so much for playing 4 chords.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're amazing.
So,
yeah.
Kind of on
Cory, that's a set list. C.
That's fine. I don't care. That's good. I'll work on I'll work on my scale. But so now that we're kind of talking about the difference between the classical and image and rock world and how that gets together, how did you? When was your first experience jumping into a more rock or like less classical type of situation?
So the first one was Bella Electric Strings. Mm-hmm. So it's all like top 40 stuff, like whatever is that out, in the pop world. And then I also got to David Perico Pop Strings Orchestra, which is basically a rhythm section. We have a couple of horn players and 6 string players, all females. And we actually use acoustics, but with pickups. And that's actually where I grew a lot in that band. And I got a lot of confidence. And David Perico, the leader of the band, he's amazing. And he will push his players to the max. He'll be like, okay, here's time to, you gotta have a feature, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. So long story short, we end up playing 25 or 64 by Chicago, and that was my feature in the band. And I'm telling you, I was shitting my pants the very first time I had to do it, and I had to do it standing up because it looks cool. It is so wrong to play cello standing up. But it looks cool. Imagine me playing like 25 or 64.
Well, I just remember being like 6 years old and they asked me about playing instruments and someone had a cello and they said you had to sit there and you had to like open your legs up and go like this. And I'm like, I feel like this is awkward for me.
I'm not.
And I watch you guys stand up. And by the way, so people know, 25 and 6-4 by Chicago is a fucking brutal song. So before David Foster made all the horn players play keyboards in the same video that they didn't even play on, Chicago was a ridiculous band that played ridiculous music that even Jimi Hendrix, in fact, they were so metal that their first guitar player, who again Hendrix hailed as one of his influences, blew his head off in Russian roulette because he was a badass, but not a smart one apparently.
So that was like the first thing that made me like go out there and held my stage presence and the confidence and communication with the audience. It was that was kind of like the first 2 bands that I started, and then we did the Fans of
So
Rock.
what was the what was the reaction like? So you learn Chicago, you learn a song that everyone knows, it's your feature, so you walk out in the crowd like, Are they feeding you back? Because I know energy
Yeah.
transfer. So like people tell me all the time when I DJ, all I do is jump. I jump in time. If someone starts doing money, I do like a money thing. I'm like a white guy doing white, like imagine Will Ferrell doing the Spartans. And people are like, that's magic. Because they know the songs. So all of a sudden, like, 300,000. And they're like, oh my God, you do the thing. So like, did they do that with Chicago?
Yeah,
did they feed you back?
It's definitely a crowd pleaser.
But how? Like, what did you feel that was different than being sitting in the back? Like, did they like yell at you? Did they start singing back at you?
They were cheering, and then the guitar solo. Obviously, the solo. It's weird.
Hard
cello. It's really hard to play on the cello, but it's really effective. Like I was so against it. I'm like, I'm not gonna play this on the cello. This is like, I can't. Yeah, like you want me to learn this on the cello, and I'm glad I did it because I learned a lot.
Yeah, just to comment on that, I think like experiences like that, I agree, are amazing, where you have the opportunity to like be in a band or a project and grow, because you kind of need that, And I notice now after many years, like playing with Starset and doing, other rock or pop gigs or whatever, you re-encounter people that are still strictly immersed in the classical world. And there's a microphone and they're like, I don't know what to do, or it's like people are screaming and they don't know what to do. It's like, it's a completely, like even psychologically, there's like a very big like period of transition, and you kind of need that, like not just doing one-off stuff, but being with a group steadily, for a while, so that you can. But really
she mentioned something really cool too that I really admire that you've done as well, Siobhán, is taking guitar music, for example, and playing it on cello. And I know that you like sit there and learn a lot of guitar solos and all that stuff. And now, like I'm a pianist mainly, and I'm trying to write better guitar parts. So a lot of things I do like automatically on piano that people go, wow, that's amazing. I have to like reverse engineer myself on the guitar and be like, that's a weird. Wow, that sounds cool, but that's hard. And it's one of those things where like you don't think it's possible. You're like, because this is written for two hands on the piano, but then you figure it the hell out and you're like, okay, I'm pretty proud of myself. And I feel like the fact that you've done that, and the fact that Mariko and Siobhán, you guys have done that. I listen to you as a plebeian and I just go, wow. Because I've seen a lot of people play strings. I've gone and seen symphony orchestras, but I watch you play with Starset, just for example. And you guys are just fucking around playing AC/DC. I know that because Siobhán tells me she's just fucking around when she's playing AC/DC. But to me, I'm like, is she playing Angus Young on an electric violin? And wait, that girl's supposed to be sitting down doing that crazy open leg thing, but she's standing up. Is that even possible? Like, and then it sounds rock and roll, and then you got the DMX 512 protocol. Adam's just sitting there in space, just floating because the lights didn't go on. Like, and you're just playing AC/DC until they figure it out. And we're all idiots because we think it's the craziest thing in the world, because it's still way better than anything I've ever done in my entire life on the piano, guitar, or really anything at all.
Oh.
There was no question.
I was going to say that's.
It was just a giant run-on statement.
No, but that's what's great about music, though, in general, is you can recontextualize stuff, and that's what makes it cool. It's like it's just a matter of time before a lot of people are going to be doing these things on strings, right? But it's cool to kind of be on the edge of that, where it's like, people are just starting to, especially with social media, getting more comfortable with the fact that, like, okay, other genres exist, and
you're like the Offenbach of our time.
But coming back to the pop strings, to pay some accolades, they're now the house band for the Raiders, which is huge. So going back to the beginning of your journey, now she's playing a giant stadium with the same group, So wait, talk about a trajectory.
With who? I'm going to say who, like the owl. With who is she playing with? Who?
You want to tell us about
her.
it, Z?
Yeah, so it's so this band, it's called David Perico Pop Strings Orchestra. And so right before I went on the tour, we did audition for Raiders to be their house band during their games. So
how many people show up to a Raiders game?
What's that?
How many people show up to a Raiders game? I don't know anything about basketball.
So actually, fun fact. So the very first game, it was 65,000 people, actually. Wow. It's huge. It's huge. It's intense.
That's more than me and Cory played together in our entire lives for all of our collective cumulative shows.
No, but
Ever.
wait. The fun fact, well, actually, I don't know if it's fun fact, was that game was at that game was the most vaccinated people in one place. That first game, because it's a requirement. You have to be vaccinated to go see the game. So if you're a fan and you're not vaccinated, you're fucked. You can't.
That's a statistic that if you told someone 2 years ago, they go, "What the fuck are you talking
Well,
about?"
you want to know what I want to know?
right?
You know what I want to know? I want to see the people at the vaccination clinics that are like, listen, I know I might fucking die with your fucking stupid, crazy fucking thing that I don't know what's in it, but I need to see the goddamn Raiders. So just fucking put it in. And if I die, I get syphilis, fuck it. Because I love the Raiders and I need to see that Z girl play some cello.
Oh, you guys are probably Patriots fans, right? Patriots. Are you guys?
I told you I don't like hockey.
Yeah.
Care for?
Yeah, I would call myself a Patriots fan who doesn't get a chance to watch much football these days. So, but
How is Bledsoe doing now? Is he still throwing?
he's got a vineyard. He makes wine now. He's doing pretty well.
Right.
Well, that's funny. You should get with Flutie. You get in a Flutie glass. It's perfect.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh. No, but that's like it is amazing to go back and think about the classical world, and learning to play acoustic in these small environments, and like even the learning curve for going to play a stadium, right? Like having in-ear mixes, and it's stuff that a lot of rock musicians may not talk about it, but for us, it's like a huge thing because we don't learn that in school. No one's saying, oh yeah, like this is how you fix your in-ear mix. They're like, oh, you're never going to play with in-ears in your life.
But hold on, so you basically play.
My first gig here in Vegas was like, okay, bring your DI box and in-ears, and I was like, what? Like I had no clue. And then of course my ex-husband, as he was a bass player, like helped me out, so I had no idea, like, what's the box?
Yeah, I can relate to that.
It was, and my very first pickup was awful. I got this Fishman, I think it was a Fishman, and it sounded so bad.
I was the same. I had that too, and yeah, it was horrible. When I first joined Starset, that's what I had, and they were like, "Your violin sounds like a trumpet." I'm like, "Well,
you know what you need to do? You guys need to find a pickup that makes you sound like MIDI. Because if Madonna's taught me anything, if Shoda, who did the whole Jason Becker orchestra, is that you should stop trying to sound natural like Jacques Dupre or whatever the heck her name was, and putting all your own personal stuff. You should imitate MIDI because you can make that on the iPhone, and everyone knows that Billie Eilish programming her own MIDI is way better than your years of training in Slovakia.
If anyone's confused, he's made several references to things that happened on and off the show over the past several years. So just don't feel guilty if you don't know what's happening right now.
Derailing our listeners.
I visualize Ben's rants now as the Wile E. Coyote when he runs off the cliff and doesn't realize that he's got nothing below him. And then when it stops, it just crashes. That's how every time this happens now, it's what I see.
Oh
it's a lot like my Apple computer.
Oh my God.
But it's funny that you mentioned like bring your DI box. I mean, I don't play at the Raiders Stadium. I don't play on these big tours and festivals. I've had a couple of good gigs, but even I don't have to bring my own DI box. Like, tell your sound guy to get his shit together. Like, what's wrong with you? Buy a DI box for your string players. Come on.
And by the way, how crazy is it that realistically every night you're playing for like a sold out U2 crowd, and like even though it's for the Raiders, like how cool is it that you guys are literally playing every single night to the same as like if Billy Joel were to play Fenway Park in Boston, but like every game?
Yeah, it's pretty intense. Well, I mean, obviously it's every home game, so
Well,
I think
yeah.
10. I think it's like 10 total. Of course, I don't get to play all of them, but I did play 2. I got the experience, because I'm busy and I gotta go. I got things to do. I got a place to be.
Recently, so we had some Starset festival shows, right? And she was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm too famous. I'm playing with the Raiders." So everyone's like, "All right, Time to get out that pog pedal. You're playing cello. And so just so that nobody was confused, Dustin, for like the first time ever, introduced me to the crowd because he was like, people are going to think you're not playing if I don't say something about this octave pedal. He's like, oh yeah, our cellist, can't be here because she's playing with the Raiders today. So here's Siobhán. Yeah, he said that. Oh my God. He said that at one of the shows. He's like, so yeah, like here, kudos to Siobhán for like doing double duty and playing cello. Basically, so nobody questioned if your cello tracks.
But that's horrible. That's horrible because you know what? You know what's going to happen next tour? Dustin's going to be like, okay, do we want live cello or do we want more lasers? And can Siobhán just use a pog box?
No, because the problem is,
you're like, don't give him the idea.
Then I had to make the choice of like, all right, is it going to be mostly cello or mostly violin? So I had to like become a cellist for some of the songs. But no, I mean, it's not the same. Not the same at all.
Were you debilitatedly indecisive trying to be like those parts?
No, the great thing is like, I feel like we have some great moments on stage together. And I think over the years at this point, I didn't even really need to look at the charts much because I was like, I just know what she plays. Like it was, I had to look a little bit, but when you live with those songs for so long, you kind of learn everything. Now I just need to learn how to play guitar and bass. So if anything happens.
Anything happens, yeah. Okay, I get the drums.
Yeah. Be adaptable, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can, just to ask you a question before we wrap up the first episode. In terms of your early music influences, so your dad was a musician or had musical background, but you also have a brother that's a guitar player. So did you have like some sort of early rock influence or exposure to that type of music that you liked? Did you always kind of have that in your blood, you think, a little bit in addition to the classical?
I feel like I did because, especially my brother, he was very much into to instrumental rock. He loved Dream Theater, which is like one of my favorite bands ever. And then he listened.
What's your favorite Dream Theater record? You got it. No, you can't say a thing like that in front of Cory and I, because I know Cory was a fucking total nerd at one point, being like, "Pull me under, pull me
under." Yeah, that's one of my favorite.
That's
songs.
the one. No, off Awake.
I love my absolute favorite is the one when they have that 25 minutes medley. It's the first song.
Change of Season.
Yeah, yes,
that's my favorite song by them. No one says that ever. That's my favorite record.
That's the classical musician in us. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of like classical elements in this music.
For sure.
Well, no, that's the first time Dream Theater did that, but then they've done that like every record since, because they're like, oh, well, now we're Yes, and we have to do 37-minute songs or like do a whole concept record that's like absolute silliness, whereas that was just them taking a bunch of really awesome ideas, putting them together. And one thing I got to give Derek Sherinian, who was the keyboard player at that time for a short period, was that he really, really brought that band together and made it cohesive, where it sounded like a 24-minute song versus just a bunch of prog guys going, I wonder if at Berkeley they'll think that this is crazy.
Right. No.
Because that's how I feel about a lot of their new music, is that it's just like, this is so crazy deliberately. I mean, not to say that I don't listen to Dream Theater and think that they're amazing, because they are incredible in every way. But one of the things that was awesome about that song was it was composed beautifully, and every one of the sections felt like its own song to me that was beautiful in its own way, and it was a journey. Kind of how you hope it would be if you had a 24-minute song, where sometimes I just go like, there's 8 minutes of drums now.
Yeah. No, it's not like that in this medley, specifically in this one.
I love that song.
It's how many songs is in there? Like 6?
Something like that, yeah.
7 songs, but I love the transitions. I just love it. So anyway, so he was listening to that a lot, and then like Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, Eric Johnson. So he was like a lot. He was and he was like learning all that stuff, and he's a year younger than me. So I was like, I feel like I was constantly around the guitar sounds,
So do you think you applied like that Boccherini, real soft dynamic to your playing that really translates in a crazy way to something like Starset, where when you cut through, but when you need to just be a texture, like a track for a DJ, you can do that too? Like that's a very Boccherini thing, I feel like.
Boccherini, yeah, I think so.
It's a very specific question.
Well, Luigi Boccherini, for people that don't know, was obsessed with dynamics. And one of the things I think that's so important as a cellist, and I don't know because I'm not a cellist, but I would feel it would be like, is your understanding of dynamics, especially in a rock scenario. Because if you're playing in a band like Starset, where you go from super heavy, kind of almost metal at sometimes, to like very, chill background, like your dynamics are going to be so important playing an instrument like the cello that could either slice through you and your heart or just be a nice low end at 50 hertz.
Well, I think like specifically in Starset, we have all kinds of things to play there. Sometimes we are just the background, but sometimes, there are parts where the strings need to be really forte and heard.
Yeah. Well, I've learned one thing in amplified music too that's different from classical is learning how difficult it actually can be to be a string player in a rock band setting, especially when it's not like an orchestra. Right? Because there's a kind of a difference between having the blend of like a section that's sort of like the pad underneath everything versus being kind of a more solo instrument.
Do you think that's Siobhán, is that like being Julian Lloyd Webber and realizing that no matter how great of a cellist you are, your brother's still going to be Andrew Lloyd Webber and all he needs to do is write like 4 notes for a whole fucking play and it's a Broadway hit for like 40 years?
That's like how I feel every time I sit down to write
anything. You play one note and like do like a really fast tremolo.
Just so everyone, Andrew Lloyd Webber has a brother named Julian. Just like Julian Lennon, there's a Julian Lloyd Webber who plays some of the greatest cello there is. But no one cares because he didn't write fucking Cats.
Well, it was like CPE Bach versus JS Bach. I mean, JS is the OG. You know what I'm saying?
The only one that matters to most people go, there's another Bach. There's lots of Bachs. He had like 75 kids that all composed.
So anyway, I don't know. We've been adequately derailed.
I call it progressive. It's progressive. It's like Dream Theater when they're going on a Mahavishnu orchestra kick.
So as we come to wrap up this episode, we got about 10 minutes left. Why don't we set up our next episode where I want to dive into some more of the Starset tour stories and kind of the adventures that the Starset string girls have got into. But why don't you tell us just how you got connected with Starset to begin with and how you joined in with them?
So yes, their previous cellist was obviously, you probably know, Mariko. And so,
go back and check out her episode on 2020, 2020-d.com.
Mm-hmm. And remember, they're both ageless. Go put like a pick stitch of them together and like look at Zuzana.
It's
and
so true.
Mariko.
It's so true.
No, literally, like she's like, I'm gonna say it. She's like, I am 39. I'm like, dude, if she told me she was 20, I would have been like, get your mom to sign the release for this. And meanwhile, she's older than me. I'm like, I don't know who you are, but like, I need to be putting whatever Botox into my face. She's like, I just look like this.
That's a nice voice imitation of Mariko.
That's my voice imitation of everybody. I'm sorry. I love her. She's like the nicest person.
Her voice is very gentle. And even when she wants to be, we had a gig together in Atlanta right after I came back from tour. And we were on the same gig in Atlanta. And so we were ready to play. And I was like, didn't have my shit together. And she was like, get ready. But she tried to be really like, just bust my pop, you know what I mean? But it was the cutest thing ever. She was like, get ready. It was so fucking cute. She can't be, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, you like can't be stressed out around her. Yeah, she's just like total calm, Japanese energy.
I full-heartedly believe that if we were ever going to be killed by artificial intelligence, it would look like Mariko. Because, like, she's so calming. She'd be like, don't worry, it's all going black now. And like, it's like fine as she plays cello perfectly on her song Expression.
As you go into a black hole.
Yeah, exactly. As like the CERN
Don't
super
worry.
collider basically
Get
creates the black hole with the
ready.
neutrinos. She's like, it's gonna be fine. Get ready. Boom. And there's a mushroom cloud all over our fucking world.
Yeah. So let me just tell you really quick. I think, do I have time to say this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
so anyway, so she was going on a tour with Madonna, and so they needed a cellist because they were going to release their Divisions album, and they were like, oh shit, they need a cellist. So anyway, they kind of put her in charge to finding a new cellist. So she sent me a message on Instagram if I would be interested. Of course, I had no idea who this band is. So she sent me some links, and I saw the band. I was like, how do I not know about this band? This is so freaking cool, you know?
Yeah, that's how I felt too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I talked to Ron, and then I did like a couple of festivals, just like a trial, if they will like it, if I like it, and then they asked me to go on a tour, and the rest is history. And then I stayed.
She makes it sound easy, but I'm telling you, I think we both have this experience. It can be so hard to find string players that it can be so hard to find string players that are fun, that are chill, that wanted to, like, it sounds very simple, like, oh, here's an amazing gig.
No, you're the white buffalo.
No, but it's crazy to me because I'm like, how are there not more people that it's just like an easy fit? Like, I think it's surprisingly hard, you know.
I'm trying to tell you that I am so happy to take Dustin's sloppy seconds when it comes to his music people, because he's like the Frank Zappa of our time. He's literally, it makes so much sense. Zuzana's like, oh, I was really good in the retail world and I understand finance. Like, of course you did. Because just playing strings and being beautiful from another country and speaking multiple languages is not enough for Dustin. You have to have good operational logistics skills, understand cost of doing business, COGS, opportunity cost, full-heartedly, and be able to do an end-of-year profit and loss report with your Jello and your DI box.
And with that, I don't even know if we're at the end of the episode, but
we can certainly wrap it up.
before we start the epic end of episode rant. So, but yeah, let's look forward to more discussion of Starset and, you know, continued stories with Zuzana. Thank you again for joining us. This has been 2020 Part 1 with Zuzana. Stick around for Part 2.
Just think about like what most people or what people get out of songs, like especially like in some of the Starset fans, man. Like you have people come up to you and say like, man, your guys' songs really pulled me out of a dark place. And that's incredible, you know, because I've had bands do that for me, you know, and especially when you're young and like coming of age, man, like you don't really know what to do with your emotions. And you don't even have like an outlook on life yet, you know, like most kids don't even understand. High school rocked.